these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham. Thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Hi, welcome to the In the Last Days television program. And last week we had David Wilder on from Hebron, and it's great to have you on the program again. And I just wanted to read something from Genesis chapter 18, if you're looking this up. Genesis 18 verse 1, it says, "The Lord Hashem appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day," and it's certainly warm today. "Abraham looked up and saw three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to them on the ground." And now, as far as I can tell, David, this is the first time we come across Hevron. But we were thinking, the importance of the city of Hevron. It's there in the Bible, and yet some people are watching today. Why is it so key?
These verses are the foundation for the discovery of the caves of Machpelah, because it's written in the Jewish literature, in the Jewish holy books, that when these three men appeared and Abraham saw them, so he, just as anybody greets a guest, one of the first things they're offered is something to eat. And Abraham wanted to give them something to eat. So, I don't know, that day there was a power blackout, the refrigerators weren't working, there was no meat. So he went to the pen to get a fresh calf. And he was going to prepare them some, nice barbecued steaks. And when he opened the door to the pen, he must have done it the wrong way, because one of the animals saw the knife in his hand and didn't like the idea. It hurt, so he took off. And Abraham went running after it. And it's written that he ran, and all of a sudden in the distance this calf disappears. So he kept going, and all of a sudden he saw a cave. He thought maybe he'd run into the cave. And so he runs over to the cave and he peers inside, and all the way down at the end of the cave, he sees something very strange. He sees a light glowing inside of a cave. So he goes in to investigate. And that's when it's written, he discovers the tombs of Adam and Eve, the first man and the first woman. He was the first person alive to ever discover this. And knowing how holy this site was, the entrance to the Garden of Eden, he later purchased it after his wife Sarah died. And that stems from those very verses that you just read. So this isn't just the first contact we're having in the Bible with Hevron, but it's also the contact we're having with Marat Machpelah, the tomb of the patriarchs, and the significance of that site.
And there's also, of course, King David, who made it his city.
Oh, of course. King David lived there for 7.5 years. And there's a very, very strong connection between David and Hevron. Why? Because as we saw, the first man is buried there. It's written that the first man, after he had been created, was going through the books of history. He had a history book and he was going through it, and he came to the days of King David and he looked at it, and there was this little boy named David who was born, and he read it, and it's written there that he was only going to live for a few days. And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, that's what I gave him." He says, "I'm willing to give him 70 years of my life." And so the first man gave David 70 years of his life, and that's how long David lived. So when David begins his reign as king, what's the most natural place to start? Where the origins of your own soul are, and that is there in Hevron. And there he was able to soak up from the roots, not only of the first man, but of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the beginners, the founders, the source, the pillars of Judaism and monotheism. And from that he could take the kingdom of Israel and move it up to Jerusalem and make that the eternal capital of Israel. But he started where the patriarchs and the matriarchs, as did the first man in Hebron.
Now, coming up to date, you moved to Hebron in the 1970s, I believe?
1981.
1981. But I think you said you saw it in the 70s.
Yeah, first time I was there was in 1974.
Now, are Jewish people returning to Hebron? Is that happening? Or?
Oh, sure. Well, look, people, we have returned. I mean, we're there. We live there. We're living in neighborhoods, and we very much want to grow. Our children are getting married. They want to stay there. And today we have a major, major problem. We don't have any place to put people. Well, perhaps that's not stated correctly. We have a lot of room that we're not allowed to use. Why can't we use it? Political reasons, international pressure, Obama, the European Union, the Russians, the United Nations. Need I say more? Okay? There's much property in Hevron that's owned by the community itself that we have legal documentation for. With that, we're not allowed to use that property. We cannot build on that property. We cannot, and many times even renovate on that property. Why? Because there are people that don't want us there at all. They're afraid that if we better the living conditions or bring more people in, God forbid, that would be perhaps ruining the chances for peace in the Middle East and the whole world. And therefore they try not only to prevent us from bringing more people in, but to actually squeeze the community in such ways that people are forced to leave by taking buildings away from us. We bought a building, a huge building, a 4,000 square meter building for $1 million and lived there for 20 months, and the government threw us out. And it wasn't because we didn't have proof that it belonged to us. We did. We had a film of the Arab who bought it purchasing the money. Of course, it should be understood, one of the difficulties of purchasing from Arabs in Hevron is that any Arab that sells property to a Jew is to be summarily executed. They torture them and they kill them. And when we are able to purchase property, when the Arab realizes what's happened, he starts screaming, "I never did it," so they won't kill him. And the police took the movie of him counting the money, and he said, "Oh, well, I changed my mind, I gave him money back." But for political reasons, they didn't want us there. They used different excuses to expel us. And there's other properties such as this also. So today, in order to grow in the city itself, we have to be able to expand, we have to be able to build, we have to be able to purchase. And today we're still working on that. We don't give up, but it's very, very difficult, and that prevents us from really expanding the community. But there is one thing they haven't figured out how to do yet. They haven't figured out how to keep people from having babies. And so there are a lot of children in Hevron. There are very large families. There's a family with 13 children and with 11 children. I have a daughter who lives in Hebron, who's 25 years old, who has already had a fourth child, and and so that way the community's growing. But we have our sights on bigger and better, and the day will come. It'll still take a little bit of time, but it will happen.
Now, is Hebron covered by the building freeze, or is that something different?
Hevron has been a building freeze for a long time. It didn't start a couple of months ago. We haven't, the last building that we built in Hevron, we dedicated and moved into, I guess, about 5 years ago. The building before that was 10 years ago. It's very, very difficult today to be able to build, again, because many of the politicians are afraid. They're afraid the Arabs will declare war. It never happens. But that's what they're afraid of. Today, of course, there's pressure from the United States, and any little thing that's moved, the satellites see it. The Americans know about it usually before the Israelis, and they come and tell them about it. But it is a problem. It is a problem, and we have to overcome it. Why is it so important to constantly repeat that we weren't allowed in for 700 years? Very simply because our neighbors believe that that's the way it should still be today, okay? And they say that to us. The former deputy mayor of Hevron, his name was Kamal Dweck, in an interview a number of years ago, said that if they ever control this, they won't let Jews in. Earlier last week, I guess it was a week ago, I think so, there was a man here in Hevron named Mustafa Barghouti, the former Minister of Information to the Palestinian Authority, who I had the audacity to interview. I was playing your game. I held my camera under his nose and asked him questions, and I asked him who was allowed to pray here, and he refused to answer the question. I asked him a few times, Noam asked him a few times, and he said to me, the closest he came was saying that God is everywhere and people can pray wherever they want. He refused to directly relate to this, and as the mayor of Yatta told your colleague here, He said that it's an Islamic holy site, it has nothing to do with the Jews. Okay? And this is what they believe. We know that if we didn't live here, nobody would be close to this. You can get statistics from, I don't know, the police or the army. Last year, there were almost 500,000 people that came into the so-called Jewish side of the building, and about half that number that went into the Muslim side of the building. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to talk about heritage, okay? If this isn't heritage, I don't know what is. This is first on the list because all of the heritage, not only of Judaism, but all of monotheism starts here. This is it. First of all, it's very important to know that Hevron today is not an isolated, local kind of an issue. Okay, Hevron today is part of the overall situation in all of the state of Israel, certainly in Judea and Samaria, and so that the political fate as such is not, I don't think today is, I don't know that there are discussions that we know of that are just centering around Hevron, okay? Talking about all of Judea, coming down in southern Judean hills and like that. In terms of visions, of course we have visions. But it's not just a vision, because I know it's going to happen. So how do I know it's going to happen? Because God didn't bring us back to Israel after 2,000 years, and He didn't bring us back to Hevron only to have us leave again. Okay, we're there to stay. I know there are people that find that difficult to accept, but that's the truth, and that's what's going to happen. We're not going anyplace. We hope that Hevron will be an open city, and that anybody and everybody that wants to visit Hevron and live in Hevron wherever they want should be able to. They should be able to live in Hevron freely without any feelings of danger or threats or whatever. We want to make sure that the sites in Hevron, the archaeological sites, the area that's called Tel Hevron, where Abraham and Sarah actually lived, where today there are archaeological excavations where they discovered seals in stone from 2,700 years ago, from the days of King Hezekiah, with the word Hevron embedded on that seal in ancient Hebrew. That whole area of the Tel has to be declared national park. There have to be other excavations done there. The history, that's the history, all of our history right there under our feet. That has to be uncovered. And the area has to be made, has to be beautified. People should be able to visit there from all over the world. And any normal people in any normal country would do that. They wouldn't even think about it. In Israel, however, dealing with the situations that we have, that's considered to be problematic because it's part of Palestine, right? And we know that it's part of Eretz Yisrael, it's part of the land of Egypt, it's part of the state of Israel. It's the essence of the heritage of the Jewish people. But there are people that don't buy that, or they think that we have to, in the name of peace, we have to sacrifice that. We know that when we sacrifice things like that, as we did, for instance, in Gush Katif, we got 8,000 missiles back into our backyard. However, I have no doubt that that is what will happen in Hebron, as will happen throughout Judea and Samaria. And I also have no doubt that the day will come, and it may not be in the too distant future, and we'll go back into Gaza, into Gush Katif.
And what people don't realize, many people watching who don't know Israel as a country, don't realize that the biblical sites are, you know, the ones where there's huge battles, like here in Jerusalem. Just as if we went to the other side of the city, we suddenly find that we're in different neighborhoods where not everybody is friendly towards us. If we wanted to go to Shechem, we would have problems. If we want to go to Hebron, and I don't think, David, I don't know whether it's that people don't understand the geography or they haven't been educated. Now, one of your jobs is education, isn't it? That you're educating people regarding Hebron and Israel and where the different places are, so that they can be ambassadors when they go back home. And you've got a website they can visit?
Hebron.com. Hebron.com, there's a tremendous amount of information. I try to keep it updated as much as I can. We have information about history. We have places that Hebron is mentioned in all of the Jewish literature and the Torah and different parts of the Bible. I put up yesterday photographs of ancient olive trees back in Tel Hevron, which today are actually ill. We have to heal them because they're not well. But we also deal with a lot of political issues and do a lot of writing. All the different sites the history of the sites, and of course all of the events that we have there. It's important that people understand, you know, I had I think she was a member of the Swedish parliament who came in, and she met a friend of mine here in Jerusalem, a journalist that I know, and he said, have you ever been to Hevron? She said, no, I can't go to Hevron, it's so far away. He said, yeah, it's an hour, I'll take you. And she said, no, but it's dangerous there. And he said, why? He says, well, the Arabs had told her that there were no women or children there. It was only men, and it was cowboys and Indians with the Arabs all day, you know, and the Jewish men all walk around with these big mustaches with a little bit of blood dripping off from the Arab they just finished eating from breakfast with these 2 big 6 guns. And she came into Hevron and she was astounded because first of all, second of all, there were no gunshots. Third, there were women and children. And it was nice, it was peaceful. And then she started to hear the stories and it just wasn't the way they had told her. And she was shocked. And I've heard that from other people also. So people have to understand that they can come in and see it and enjoy it. It's safe.
And it's the history. I mean, you know, for those believers who are, if you're watching today and you haven't been there, I mean, this is the place, you know, of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and I'm astounded that people can miss that, and yet, strangely enough, the Israeli Tourist Board doesn't seem to push it to show.
We're ministries in order to increase the tourism in Hevron, all different kinds of tourism. Christian tourism, education through the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. We want to get school children into Hevron. Once, as somebody once put it when he was still a lion, Ariel Sharon stood outside the tomb of the patriarchs and he said, what other people in the world have such a monument where all of the founders of the people are buried in one place? Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Leah. He said, every foreign ambassador should be brought here. Every tourist should be brought here. Every Jewish school child should be brought here because this is our roots. And he was right. But, you know, in order to break down the barriers there are people who don't come to Jerusalem today. Schools don't want to send their kids to the wall, you know, because it's dangerous. But we have to bring the children in. They have to be educated. They have to see it. They have to feel it. They have to leave with a positive feeling and understand that this is where they're coming from.
Now, one of the names, if I'm not mistaken, for Hebron or that area is the Four. The Four, because there was Abraham,
yes,
right?
That's Kiryat Arba. Kiryat Arba is the city of the four. That's what it literally means.
Now, for what?
For what? There are different interpretations. There are different meanings, but probably the most, I don't know, accepted, if there is such, are the 4 couples. There are 4 couples that are buried in the tomb of the patriarchs. Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah, and of course the original ones, the first ones, Adam and Eve. So that's 4 couples. Kiryat Arba, the city of the 4.
And it's, you know, I can vouch that it's a wonderful place to visit and quite safe, and you know, people can go there and enjoy it, and they can get in touch with you for tours and information. And you do a newsletter as well.
Yeah, we put out a newsletter. Look, we have over 500,000 people a year that visit us. And I used to say people leave the same way as they come in, meaning that in terms of security. But spiritually, nobody leaves the same, because when you come into Hevron and you breathe the air and you see the places and hear the stories and realize where you are, your soul changes. Yeah, we have newsletters. People can see us on our website. Almost all the material we put out is available there, and people can visit. They should go into the website, make a reservation. They can be in touch with me. My email is very easy, hebron@hebron.com, and that website, hebron.com, and we're open to anybody and everybody all the time.
Now, one of the things you need to realise as you're watching today, and if you've just joined us, we've got David Wilder on the programme from Hebron, is that this is real. This is the thing that gets me, David, is that this stuff that's written down is real, and that Hebron is a real place, and the tomb of the patriarchs, and Abraham was real, and Isaac, you know, that it gives, there's something about going to Hebron that gives the reality, the story, you know, of Abraham and Isaac, the story of Sarah being buried, the cave, you know, it gives a reality Because otherwise this could just be another good book, but the reality that it's a real place and you can go and visit there is something very special.
You can feel it. You know, I was reading an article this morning on the internet, that just one of the magazines, you know, did the Bible really happen? You know, and reading these different scholarly accounts about, you know, well, there was really never an Abraham and an Isaac and a Jacob. It's mythical, and you know, all of these different stories. You know, I guess, you know, if somebody is a very secular historian, and you know, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it is all real, and you can see it, and you can feel it, and you can be a part of it, and it's alive. You see, this is being in places like Hevron and Jerusalem and Shechem, all through Judea and Samaria. It's the living Bible. It's a Bible alive. It's the Word of God alive, and it's tangible. You can feel it. You're part of it, and you're a continuation of it. Okay, we are a continuation in a chain that's existed from the beginning of time, that will exist forever, and it's a tremendous privilege to be, you know, one of those little links in that chain, to be living during this period of time when we could come back to Hebron, we can resettle Hebron. With the hardships, they don't mean anything. The fact that we're there and we can bring others there, and try to make people understand what's going on. It's very hard work, but it's rewarding, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
You wouldn't go back to New Jersey and...
Certainly not to live, no.
But you know, there's, is it 5 million Jewish people in America at the moment? Something like that?
No, I think in the States, no, there are more than that. I think there are, I don't know how many millions there are. There's still more there than there are here. But we're coming up very close to having a majority of the Jewish people in Israel. We're very close to that. You know, people ask me all the time about solutions. You know, all of the problems that we deal with today, when is it going to end? And I wrote to somebody yesterday who asked me about that. And I said, the Jewish people, when we don't have 5.5 million Jews living in Israel, we have 10 million and 12 million, then the Arabs are going to start to take us seriously. That's the natural answer to the issues we're dealing with today. We have to double the population. If there had been, instead of 8,000 people in Gush Katif, there had been 25,000, it wouldn't have started. Today, rather than having, I don't know how many they say, 300,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria, we have to have 1.5 million. And that's going to happen.
And do you feel an urgency for the Aliyah, which people, I want to just explain that's the return of the Jewish people to Israel. Do you feel there's in the days that we're living in, with uncertainty in America and Europe and other places, and anti-Semitism, do you feel there's an urgency for the Jewish people to come back?
There's no uncertainty whatsoever. When you see Obama, and you see him trying now to rid Israel of its nuclear weapons, he's trying to bring about the destruction of the state of Israel, and you see what the Europeans are doing, there's no uncertainty. We know exactly what's going on. The only the only place where Jews could be able to live is here. And the longer they stay there, the more difficult their situation is going to be. They don't like to hear that. It's difficult for them to accept that. People are starting to wake up. And we are going to see, I believe, a tremendous increase in Aliyah and Jewish people coming to live in the state of Israel. And that's going to make all the difference in the world.
Now, sometimes we never know who's going to watch the program, but if there's somebody watching who would like to make Aliyah, there's a number of organizations that can help them, nefeshbnefesh, and...
The first people I would call would be nefeshbnefesh, Rabbi Yeshua Fass, who runs the organization. I can tell him that they heard me on television. It'll get him some brownie points. But no.
But seriously, there is this urgency, isn't there? That
yes, definitely.
The diaspora wakes up to the need to make Aliyah, to come back.
We have no choice. We have no choice. That's what we have to do. And the longer people wait, the more difficult it's going to be. And it would be too bad, because the attempts that we saw in New York, what we saw in 9/11, is child's play. These people have the means to, God forbid, to use mass terror, and why should people die there? Let them come here.
Do you think that's a warning for the Jewish people?
It's a warning for the entire world. Of course for the Jews. It should be a wake-up call for the entire world.
Well, it's been great to have you on the program today. We've had David Wilder, who is the English spokesman from the Jewish community of Hebron. We've got details on the screen how you can contact him. There's an email, there's a website. I know that they would very much appreciate your support, the work they're doing, for the work they're doing, as we would. And if you'd like to contact us, we will also have our details on the screen. And you know, these are tremendous days that we're living in, that we can see the Jewish people returning to the land of Israel and returning to the ancient cities. We love you, God bless you, and remember, we're living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.